Well, welcome everyone. I am Lynn Fletcher. I'm one of the members of the leadership team at 31st Street Swing Left. For those of you who haven't been to one of our events before, a quick history. Our group was started by Lisa Herrick. You'll meet her a little bit later, with 30 people in her living room on 31st Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. in January 2017. 31st Street supports legislative candidates. We support on-the-ground grassroots groups, voter registration efforts, and state Democratic parties in a number of swing states. We've raised nearly $9.5 million since we started, knocked on many thousands of doors, and grown to over 1,500 members. I have to say, it is incredibly fulfilling to be part of such an effective, dedicated group of people. This is our 7th cycle working to put Purple Virginia into the blue column. Virginia is my state. I live here. My husband and I have lived here for 40 years now. And honestly, it kills me to think about what it will mean to my friends and neighbors, my family, if the Republicans flip our narrow margin in the state Senate and continue to hold the Virginia House of Delegates. That would be a trifecta for Glenn Youngkin. And Youngkin and the Republicans, they will do all they can to turn Virginia into another Texas or Florida. They are already trying to restrict abortion rights, do away with gun safety laws, undermine voting rights. I can go on, ban books, curtail LGBTQ rights. This Virginia election is a bellwether for 2024. It can set us up for success or be a national launch pad for Glenn Youngkin. This is important work that you all are participating in. If you like what you see tonight and you're not already a member, please go to our website, 31ststreet.org, and join us. Honestly, we always have room for a few more people. Tonight, we have the pleasure of hearing from 2 of our inspiring candidates for the Virginia House of Delegates, Josh Thomas and Kim Adams. Before we get there, I have a couple of housekeeping notes. Please put all your questions in the chat. We will make sure that they get to the candidates and that they're able to answer them. We will end tonight at 8 p.m. However, some of us are going to stay on for 10 minutes or so afterward to answer any additional questions you have. I want to ask Kim and Josh, if you want to stay, you are welcome to do that, although we understand you have a lot going on. Our fundraising goal tonight is $120,000. Amazingly, we are at $96,000. We will be putting the donation link in the chat. 31st Street takes no money. All of it goes straight to the candidates, every one of them that are on our slate, through Act Blue. It's simple to donate tonight. You can do it while you're listening, while you're watching. Just click on the link and it only takes a couple of minutes. I want to make sure the slides are up. There it is. Big thank you to our co-sponsor, the Swing Blue Alliance. Swing Blue Alliance is a dedicated powerhouse group. Welcome to all of our friends from Swing Blue Alliance. We are so glad you're here in this fight with us in Virginia. And of course, I want to welcome and thank all of our co-hosts tonight. We really could not have the successes that we've had without all of you. So everybody just take a minute and look at the names and thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jim Shelton, our analyst, who will tell you more about our strategy and the importance of these races. Take away, Jim.
Great, Lynn, and I really appreciate that Virginia perspective. We have it vicariously, but we feel your pain, if you will, and your apprehension. So I just want to show my face for a minute, but then I'm going to do what I always do, which is spend the rest of my time showing slides. I'm the political analyst here at 31st Street, swing left. So back to sharing slides. And hopefully people can see that. Right. All right. So again, some of you are not that familiar with what we do. And I won't belabor this, but we have a particular modus operandi that I think is, we try to be very systematic and careful and impactful what we do. We search very hard for strategic opportunities of where to intervene in things. And a lot of that is doing things that are kind of overlooked. We call it zigging when other people are zagging. We, again, focus very carefully on a few things, not a huge number of things, so that we think we know we're in our lane or wheelhouse, as people say it. And as part of that, spent a lot of time, thought of what I do, looking at evidence of a variety of types and doing due diligence, which I do a lot of every day. And we also, though we don't get stuck in a rut, we expect that we will change when we see new data. And a lot of that is when things unexpectedly happen. But we also know that timing, especially in the election cycle, is vital, and things change over time. And you need to just sort of be going along with the flow for that. So now shifting very definitely to Virginia. And again, as Lynn said, this is now our 7th cycle in Virginia. Each one's a little different, but we think we've picked up some wisdom or experience along the way, if you will. So again, a lot of you already understand what's going on in Virginia and are already convinced. That's why you're on the call. But just to kind of make it clear for a few that maybe don't know it, we have these all 140 legislature seats up, and we do have this, what is actually a 4-seat majority in the Senate, which would be 0 if we lose 2, if 2 of them flip. In the House, there are 100 seats, and we are in the minority, but not by a lot. And what's happened is that there's been major redistricting. So almost nobody is in, their same district that they were in before, or if there are, they're very few. And everybody is kind of running in a seat that's they're not, they have a lot of new voters in. My personal view is we have just as much a chance of winning back the House as we do of holding the Senate. And that's one reason why our 2 speakers are so vital to doing that. And again, as Lynn said, if we lose our 2 seats because the lieutenant governor is a Republican, we would have a Republican trifecta. So. Okay, so here's the guy, and Lynn has already laid it out. Glenn Youngkin is a formidable opponent. First of all, he's very MAGA. I mean, by his actions, now he may be doing it for, pragmatic reasons because he wants to get votes, but he's definitely pushing a number of things that she mentioned. I'm just mentioning a couple of them here in the interest of time. And he's formidable. He's raised a huge amount of money. Some of it he probably wants to use for when he tries to run for president. But I would say he's a very able tactician, crafty, you might even say. So that's why we're sort of, in fact, that's one of the reasons why we're doing this fundraisers I'll come back to. And he also wants to have it as a springboard to presidency. That's why I've got these 2 arrows. You notice I've got them pointed down because we don't want that to happen, do we? No. Okay. So just to give you a little sense of the battleground, this is the map of the Old Dominion, Virginia. And, here's the DC suburbs, Richmond suburbs, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Tidewater area, and so forth. And actually, with 140 seats, there's very few that are competitive. The rural areas are very red, the urban areas are very blue, and the battleground is these sort of light blue areas for the most part. These light blue areas, now this is just the House races districts here. There are 11 districts where Biden won, but Youngkin also won. And those basically pretty much are the battleground districts. They're sort of ex-urban, they're sort of partly rural, partly urban, that sort of thing. And that's what makes them the battleground districts. And at the moment, we have 5 of our 8 House slate candidates, House candidates are from those districts, 2 of which we will hear from in just a few minutes. But we also, I don't have the Senate districts here, but I do have these green arrows that point to where their districts are as well. Right. Okay. So that's just to give you a sense of that. Now, here's something that's my own sort of tactical point to put on here that I try to impress on campaigns, which is that there's no statewide offices up and there's no national offices that are up for election. So this is going to be a very low turnout election. You know, estimates might be 30, 35%, a lot more in the competitive districts, or a lot, I mean, more than, you know, still on average, not that much. But here's my view: is the winning is primarily going to be determined by whoever turns out the most supportive voters that they can. And we're seeing that in the early voting already, which started on Friday. Youngkin has been very vocal about wanting to get people to turn out early. And it looks like to some extent that may be succeeding. So then we've got these 8 candidates, and we've done this before and we've changed a little bit over time, but here's how we do it. First of all, we are just out to win, obviously ethically, but it's not about any particular issue. It's not about whether we like someone, that we like all these people. It's just what we think will win. We start with the voting tilt of the district, which I already showed you some of already in that map. That's pretty straightforward. We look very carefully at campaign fundraising. You know, where's money coming in? What are they spending it on? Sometimes even who's donating it to. We will look to them. We will be looking at that and trying to look for the places where money will be the most effective and helpful. There's private polling that the caucuses do, basically on behalf of the candidates. And we're lucky that on a confidential basis, the caucuses in the party, the Democratic Party, will make those available to us. So that is very helpful in knowing where we want to put resources. And we had discussed a lot with the candidates. Kim will tell you I've had a lot of conversation with her and her campaign manager. So, for example, we get a sense after 7 cycles about how good campaigns are. And we talked to key informants, not that many, but a handful across the state that we think are really knowledgeable of what's going on. And then there are a few minor things that we throw into the mix. But as you can see, it's an art form, but it's an evidence-based art form. And we take it very seriously and work at it very, very hard. So again, we shift when we have makes sense. So anyway, here's our list of our pictures of our candidates, and reiterating our goal of $120,000. Now, hopefully you've heard Lynn say we've already raised $96,000. So you're probably asking yourself, well, how can that be? Well, the answer is that this fundraiser tonight is really just kind of the culmination. We've been at this for about a month, working with our co-hosts, working with our members, reaching out to people and so forth. And so we've never missed a goal, by the way. And so this is one of the ways that we're able to do this. We actually did an earlier iteration of about $200,000 for a slate of candidates, not quite the same as this, but pretty similar. And we didn't actually know if we were going to raise more money, but when we saw Glenn Youngkin was raising so much money and being so crafty, we decided we really had to weigh in some more. So that's why we did it that way. So lastly, here's a couple more close-up pictures in a way of our candidates. And as they know, our custom is that we really don't like to do long introductions of our guests, but rather leave it to them to make their own presentations and tell us about themselves. So right now it's over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Jim. Before I get in and talk about myself and the race and what's going on here in Virginia, I do really just want to thank everybody that's on this call. If you've been with the organization for a while, then you already know what I'm about to say. But if you're new, I would just like to impress upon you how meaningful 31st Street's impact is. And also thank you, Swing Blue, for participating as well. I come from the private sector, and I'm a commercial real estate attorney, so I represent clients up and down from size and asset class and what have you. And most of them are used to being audited. And I can tell you that Jim does a great job on your behalf of auditing us campaigns to make sure that we are doing what we are supposed to be doing and that we are upholding our end of the bargain. So for an organization, as Lynn specified earlier, I think it's important to note that doesn't itself use any of the funds, but gives them all to candidates. For an organization to function so in such a sophisticated manner is very, very impressive. And I say that from the vantage point of being one of the most critical races in Virginia and having lots of different partners, but it is just very, very, very clear that 31st Street is incredibly well run. So you're joining a good organization if you're new, and if you've been here a while, I'll stop talking about it because you already know all this stuff. So without further ado, I am Josh Thomas. I am running an HD21. As you saw on that map, I'm kind of the little triangle-shaped district that's kind of the northernmost of the districts on this slate. I think it's really meaningful that both Kim and I are here tonight, because if you were to look at the Virginia Public Access Project's kind of index of between 2021 and 2022 voting, who were the two districts that are right on the 50-yard line of the football field, it would be myself and Kim. So we're excited here to be able to talk to you tonight, coming from the perspective of these two races that are just right on the razor's edge. My name is Josh Thomas. I am a former United States Marine. I served in Afghanistan in the Middle East. Then I came back here to Virginia, where I got my law degree from the College of William and Mary, Go Tribe, and then came up here to Northern Virginia and DMV area to practice commercial real estate, and that's what I do now. And in the middle of that practice, I was getting my feet under me. I went from being a baby lawyer to a somewhat functioning lawyer with a firm. And then the pandemic happened. And if you work in real estate and nobody's going anywhere, it's very tough on your clients and it's tough on firms. And so I saw my industry really, really contract. I say all that because what was so stark is during the recovery that was after, I mean, I'm sure we can joke about this later, when the world kind of one day decided COVID was over, which I didn't really see anything scientific about it. But when it was over and there was a recovery occurring, I saw my industry surge. It was doing very, very well. And so I would practice at my law firm in DC in the Georgetown waterfront, and I would drive 29 miles home to the Manassas area, and I would see something completely different. I would see very little recovery for the people that lived around me. I was in an apartment complex at the time with my wife, and we had good friends that we had made since moving to the area, and they were being evicted. And these were folks that had made all the right choices, every choice that, whether you're a conservative or a liberal or a progressive, everyone would have said, yes, they made all the right choices, and yet they're still being evicted because of the immense financial constraints that were being put on people and are still being put on people in this time. I mean, our food pantry here in the Manassas area has more customers now that are serving more people now than during the pandemic, to give you an idea of how dire the economic situation has been the last couple of years. So when I was approached to run, I was thinking, well, I saw all this happen after the Great Recession. I couldn't really do anything about it at the time because I was contracted to join the Marine Corps, so can't make Uncle Sam mad. But here I am years later, and now I'm an attorney, and I have the ability, and so that's why I stood up and decided to run in the first place. This question I ask my staff every day, and it's the question that propels me to knock that next door and make that next phone call, which is, what are we doing to help working families today? And what are we doing to help working families tomorrow? And I'll be honest with you, I think it's a message that from all the way from President Biden all the way down to the state level really, really resonates with voters, whether they're Democrats or centrists or independents or what have you. It is those kitchen table issues and some of the serious social issues of our time really can be funneled through that lens of the working family. I mean, all the candidates on the slate that you see before you, these 8 candidates, are the only candidates in each race that are really, really fighting for meaningful access to the middle class. They're out there fighting for lower prescription drug costs. for those working families, for affordable housing, which is my #1 issue for those working families, make sure those working families have a great education for their children and have improved healthcare so that those working families can see their grandchildren. And the thing I always say is we Democrats here in Virginia are the only candidates in each of our respective races that are also fighting for your right to decide if and when you want to start that working family, because we stand for reproductive freedom. And so I think that message is very, very powerful in the exurbs. And Jim gave you a great overview of really where these battlegrounds are, which is kind of the exurbs of the major metropolitan areas of Virginia. But I would also say when we're talking about reproductive freedom, there is a spillover effect. For those of you that don't live in Virginia, maybe you're in the DMV area, maybe you're in DC or Maryland, I think it's really fantastic and meaningful that you're here, because I would also point out the statistic that we got about a week ago. I think it was Axios who put it out, that Virginia's abortion care providers have seen a 60% increase in the last year of services. And most of that is folks from North Carolina, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, coming across the border, as we are the only southern state still providing that type of care that it's very much needed. And if we fall, if the Republicans get those 2 seats in the Senate and we're not able to take back the House, they will have a trifecta. And you will see then it spill over into DC and Maryland, and those services become overwhelmingly taxed, because Virginia is a very populous place. And those folks that are to the south of us will have to travel across Virginia to get to DC and Maryland for those services. So not only will 4 million women be disenfranchised here in Virginia, but it'll negatively impact both DC and Maryland. So it's incredibly important that you're here. I promise you that each one of the people, because I've talked to all of them on this slate, are out there fighting and working hard every day. I also know, because Leader Scott, are at least in the House, on the House side, holds them the House candidates accountable, and he's not afraid to tell us when we're straying from the right path. And so it's very important that you're here. And the other thing I will say, and Jim and I have had these conversations as well, which is when you're able to give us these funds, they have a direct impact on the amount of time that we don't have to spend on the phones and can spend canvassing. And I've had that personal experience. In my district, I have a lot of gated communities, and when we're able to get into a gated community, they're not really on our own schedule, but when we're able to get in, we've got to go, and we've got to work, and we've got to start canvassing for however many hours we can in there and rearrange our schedule to get this done. And to know that we can rely on a little bit of flexibility, which organizations like 31st give us, it's incredibly important, has an impact much larger than the fundraising itself, because it gives us the time to get in there and meet as many voters as possible, so that we can convert as many votes as possible and win the day. I can't speak for Kim, but I can tell you in my district, in District 21, most people say it's going to be a 300 vote race. I mean, that's only about 10, 15 votes, 20 votes a precinct, depending on the size of one's district. And so each moment and each hour that we're able to get in there and knock those 20, 30 doors an hour is incredibly important to the overall mission, which is, of course, winning the 21st, winning all these House and Senate seats on this slate of 8. Which, if we do, as Jim noted, we will win we will keep the Senate, we will win the House. I think it'll be very clear come gubernatorial time in 2025 that Virginia will be trending blue very solidly. And also, what I love to tell folks outside of Virginia, when I'm talking to folks in California, is that these are the only competitive elections before President Biden runs for re-election next year. This is really the only referendum in a competitive area to see if the American Rescue Plan is having an effect. I mean, Northern Virginia in particular is reliant on a lot of transportation dollars from that legislation. If voters are really responding to what Democrats are saying, both at the national level and at the state level, when it comes to committing to funding a budget, when it comes to fighting for reproductive freedom, and that is here. It's a nationalized election at a state level. So I've talked on long enough. I'm really excited to be able to turn it over to Kim. Again, my name is Josh Thomas, running an HD21, and really looking forward to have a conversation tonight and answer some questions. Thank you.
All right, Kim, if you can unmute. I can't see you, but I know you're there.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lynn. I found out that we have something in common, because I too have lived in Virginia for 40 years, but that was all my life. Again, I want to say good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I won't repeat everything that Josh said, but we are very much like-minded in the fact that we are so appreciative of this opportunity and just the structure in which this is done. I've had a lot of conversations with Jim, and Josh said that he's a bit of an auditor, which I chuckled because I actually am an auditor professionally. That's what I do, but I'm still no match for Jim, and I acknowledge that. So again, I thank you all so much. I am Kimberley Pope Adams, the Democratic nominee for House District 82. House District 82 covers 4 localities: Dinwiddie County, Prince George County, Surrey County, and the city of Petersburg. This is a majority rural district. I live in Dinwiddie County with my 15-year-old son, and we have a very unique district because we have an urban center, whereas the city of Petersburg, however, the outskirts are those 3 localities. What is also very interesting this year is that the 3 rural localities have all of their constitutional officers on the ballot in November, whereas the urban center, Petersburg, only has the General Assembly and I believe maybe Soil and Water Board. But what that means is that it is that much more important that we meet voters where they are. And I have been so fortunate, as Josh said earlier, because of the support of groups like 31st Street, I've been able to spend that much more time meeting voters where they are. Like I said, professionally, I am an accountant, I am an auditor, I have been for almost 20 years. Undergrad, I received my degree in accounting and information systems from Virginia Tech. I also received my master's of business administration as a working single mom. So multitasking is not new to me, and I am up for the challenge. Because I've been an auditor and an accountant for almost 20 years, my professional career has crossed 5 governor's administrations while serving for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it is no secret that Republicans are doing their best to roll back the progress that we have made. Now, fortunately, because my career has spanned so many different administrations, when it comes to rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse, I do it no matter who's in office, because it doesn't matter whether it's left versus right, it's about right versus wrong. And that's what we need in politicians now, are people who are able to be objective and to really fight for what's right. And what concerns me the most about this particular campaign season is that Glenn Youngkin has made it perfectly clear he will spare no expense to win, because he doesn't care whether or not he's right. He just wants to win. And that is dangerous. That is dangerous for women. That is dangerous for our children. That is dangerous for us all. Because as I said, he has made it clear that the only thing that matters to him is winning, even if that is to the detriment of us in Virginia. So I am so excited for the opportunity, as I said, to continue to meet voters where they are. Josh and I, and he didn't say this, but Josh and I are in a door knocking challenge where every month we are given a goal that we have to knock in order to admittedly receive financial incentive. But again, that is just one more opportunity for us to not have to spend that additional time on the phone, but instead do what's important. That direct voter contact is the most important aspect of this. As I said, I'm a mother, I'm a single mother, and my motivation to run stems from me seeing people like me in the community all the time, but I've never seen anyone like me in the General Assembly. I've never seen a working single mother who sometimes had to decide between buying groceries or buying gas. That's real, and that happens to so many of us. Yet, when we look at who are the decision makers in the General Assembly, oftentimes they don't reflect the lived experiences of my district. And I wanted to change that. And I believe together we will change that, because it is no, as I said, it is no secret that Glenn Youngkin has an agenda, and that agenda is not to do what's best for us. So I am the product of the public school system. My 15-year-old son is matriculating through the public school system. Everyone in my family is a product of the public school system. I am the first person in my family to go to college. And it is not lost on me that those opportunities presented themselves because my daddy was a union worker. I grew up in a union home, and I saw the difference that a union job could make. My daddy only had a high school diploma, but I don't have undergrad student loans, because what scholarships didn't cover, my parents were able to. So when Josh talked about the middle class, that is real to me. That is my life. That is my lived experience growing up in a true middle class household where you could have one job and make ends meet. You could have the work car, and in my family, we had the church car. It was an Oldsmobile. And that was what we drove just on Sundays. And Daddy was so proud of that. So again, as I said, and I won't keep you long, but I really want to emphasize the sense of community that is in my district. I have lived here my entire life. I've never lived anywhere else. So when we talk about redistricting, I couldn't have run anywhere else. This is my home. So this race is deeply personal to me because this isn't about the voter. This is about my family, my friends, my colleagues, my neighbors, because we have all been here and we know that collectively we can get the things done that are necessary. We can make sure we strengthen our public school system. We can make sure that we have a safe community free of gun violence, and that is an issue in my community. Affordable housing is an issue in my community. I have people who live in mobile home parks. I have people who live on campgrounds. That is real in my district. In the city of Petersburg, the median household income is $44,000. That is not for an individual. That is the household income, $44,000. That's two people making minimum wage in Virginia. So admittedly, my district does not have the capacity to fundraise like some other districts in the Commonwealth, which is why I am so very grateful for opportunities like this, because there's so much we want to do. And Jim alluded earlier that there are some times when you've got a, what you say, zig instead of zag or zag instead of zig. But that is absolutely the case in my race, because Glenn Youngkin is pouring money into my opponent's campaign. And Jim had a conversation with myself and my campaign manager less than 2 weeks ago. And while admittedly we wanted to pursue TV and we've really wanted to invest in TV, and Jim made a very valid point about radio. It is so much more economical. It is so much more effective. It's such a better use of our campaign dollars. And I'm so happy to say, and Jim knows this, but I will share with everyone that we have embarked on an aggressive radio campaign that with your support, we will be able to continue through election day, because admittedly, it took someone on the outside looking in to say, listen, there's a way to do it. There's a better way to do it. And it's not always about quantity, it's about quality. And I'm so very appreciative of that conversation, Jim, because you really did show me that when you have a finite amount of resources, you really can look for the quality touches instead of just worrying about the dollars. Now, that's not to say that we don't need the dollars, because Josh and I will tell you, this is not a cheap race. However, it is so very important for us to always keep sight of the end goal. And the end goal is making sure that we do not lose our freedoms. We do not lose for a woman, I do not lose the right to make my own healthcare decisions. And one of the most important things I'm hearing on doors is that even those, and like I said, this is a majority rural district. So even those who weren't as vocal in their advocacy for abortion rights have now come to realize that it's not just about abortion. Because if Glenn Youngkin takes away this right, then what is next? Is it our voting rights? Is it trans rights? Is it what would be next? Would our parents, our public school students? So it is a slippery slope when you have someone as admittedly charismatic as Glenn Youngkin, because he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And we cannot lose sight of that, because what he is doing is trying to make us believe something other than what is true. He is trying to make Virginians believe his truth is the truth. But Democrats, we know the truth. And the truth is we deliver. We deliver for working class families. We deliver for women. We deliver for our children. We deliver for our community. And this again, I will wrap this up by saying, again, I am so very appreciative of the opportunity to meet voters where they are. And with your support, with your continued support, Josh and I will be able to keep knocking on doors, to keep meeting voters where they are, and to keep Virginia moving forward. So again, thank you so much. And I'm open for questions.
Kim and Josh, You'll be blushing when you read the comments, is all I can say when you read the chat. We're now going to hear from Lisa Herrick.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to talk for a minute before we're going to open it to questions and answers. And Erin is going to look through the chat and pull out some questions and direct those to the candidates. I am the person that founded 31st Street in 2017. I would not call myself the leader of 31st Street. We have 17 leaders and we have 1,500 members. And we have an incredible core of members who are here all the time and come to all our events and canvass and donate and just are the core of our organization. So we are a large machine of many cogs and we all work incredibly well together. And I just want to thank Swing Blue Alliance again for your support. I'm just doing the ask tonight and we're doing really well in raising the money. So that is fabulous. But I just have a couple of words to say in terms of asking for your generosity. And I want to refer to a book that I've read recently called Strangers Drowning: Grappling with Impossible Idealism, Drastic Choices, and the Overpowering Urge to Help by Larissa Mafarquhar. She tells the stories of do-gooders, people who have gone above and beyond what a typical person would call necessary in order to help total strangers. One couple established a lepers colony in India. Others donated their kidneys or parts of their livers to strangers in need. And Mafarquhar explores ethical and moral questions about our own choices and impulses to do good. And she tries to understand why some of us are driven to help people beyond our own sphere and why some of us are not. Everyone here is a do-gooder if the definition is trying to help people beyond our own sphere, our own families, our own communities. And yet, though, as individuals, some of us might not be impacted by an abortion ban, gun violence, limited access to healthcare. All of us are affected by the threat to democratic norms in our country. In that way, we're all trying to pay attention to what is happening beyond our own families and our own communities. And at the same time, we're trying to do good for ourselves because we all live in this country. And what happens in this country is going to affect us. What happens in Virginia is going to impact us. So tonight, we are not asking you to donate a kidney. So yay, but we're asking you to stretch in your donations, whatever that means to you. If you've given before, we're asking you to say something about Kim and Josh and maybe give again. We're asking you to give a little bit more than maybe you thought you would. My husband and I donate every time Jim and the 31st Street leadership team switches their focus to a new candidate, a new campaign, a new grassroots group, we donate again. And tonight, even though we've donated to this slate a few more times after meeting Kim and Josh, we're going to donate again because we have to. And yeah, maybe we're do-gooders, but mostly we just can't look away. We can't look away. We know what is happening and we know what is essential to do. I'm very grateful that you're all here with us. And what I would ask you to do is not only donate one more time or one more dollar, but please stay with us into 2024 and through 2024, because we need every single one of you. So I hope that you're here the next time we have a Zoom. Thanks again. And I'm going to give it back to Aaron, and he is going to talk about questions and answers for these candidates.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm so glad I don't have to donate a kidney tonight. Great news. I am the membership person at 31st Street Swing Left and also the Q&A moderator for a lot of our events. So also, if you are new to our organization, 31st Street Swing Left, and you want to get our email newsletters to find out what are our current best bets, just go to our website, 31ststreet.org, and you can sign up and be well informed. But for now, we have some questions for our candidates. So the first one, and maybe Josh, you can go first, and then Kimberly, you can take the same question. What are the major campaign needs that you things you don't have that you would use this money to fund? Like, what are your sort of major needs that our donations could help you to shore up? So maybe Josh, if you want to start.
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple examples that are particular to my race, but then I'm also, I'm here representing, Kim and I are here representing the slate as well. So I'll also give you ones that I know are just endemic problems and needs for all 8 candidates. So for me, I'm actually in one of the most diverse districts in all of Virginia, Prince William County, the county I'm in. You may not know this, is in the top 20 nationally for most diverse counties, particularly along national origin. 1 in 4 people you see walking around in the county were born outside the United States. So we have, when it comes to campaigning, we have significant needs when it comes particularly to our voters and our constituents who speak Spanish at home or primary language is Spanish. So we have done more than any other campaign in our area has done, at least in the last 15, 16 years, which is we have gone all in on outreach to the Latino community. We have had a day of action. A third of our staff speaks Spanish. We have listening sessions. Some of the neighbors I told you about where I was motivated to run in the first place come from that particular community. And so I knew affordable housing was the issue of the day for a large portion of my folks. And so I'm so glad Jim and Kim brought up radio. So one of our deltas in our budget that we don't have the money to pay for yet is Spanish speaking radio, which is very, very popular in the DMV area and in Maryland and Virginia and DC. So that's one that's particular to our campaign. Things that I can tell you apply to all 8 folks on this slate. The big one right now is media. We are seeing, because of Glenn Youngkin's fundraising cannon, and he is firing away. It's certainly now this week. We have started to see in very key races falling behind a little bit when it comes to the cable buys. So right now, what you see, the usual most campaigns across Virginia on both sides, everyone's up on cable, and then a very few select races will probably go up on broadcast in a few more weeks. But what you're seeing right now is Republicans outspending Democrats by 5, 10, 15%. That's manageable. But now you're starting to see it get to be 20, 25%. That's where you're really starting to lose eyeballs and ears with voters not being up on cable. So that would be something where these funds really, really can make up the difference. Because sometimes in some media markets, I don't want to speak for Kim, so you should probably answer this for you directly. I don't know what the Petersburg media market is, but I can tell you that it's, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 a week in Northern Virginia on a cable buy. But if you only need 3,000 or 4,000 to keep up, then that's very meaningful. And that's something certainly that I've seen 31st Street knock out in a week, again, because this is a very efficient and amazing organization. But I'll turn it over to Kim for the rest of the answer.
Thank you, Josh. And you're right. We are noticing an increase in the media buy from my opponent as well. She is actually spending $100,000 this upcoming week on TV. And I still stand by radio because as I said, after Jim spelled it out so plainly as to how effective it can be, that's what we're going to do. We are on TV, but we are not trying to chase behind something that is just so impractical. So instead, we have an aggressive radio plan. It is $20,000 from now all the way through Election Day. And the amount of exposure we can get for that $20,000 is just, it's unfathomable in comparison to how expensive TV is. I will admit in my district, there is a particular focus on Black radio. We have several radio outlets that just target completely different genres of music. So whereas there may be a rap or an R&B station that focuses on a particular demographic of my voters, but then there may be a Black gospel radio station that is completely different group than would be on that other station. So there really isn't much overlap in terms of people, listening to multiple stations. You kind of have to get to them all. And it's just so wonderful that we're able to do that for $20,000. $20,000 is what, Josh, a day of TV? It feels like it. It feels like it's about a day of TV, but we're talking 6 weeks of radio. So that is the biggest need for my campaign, because we know how impactful it can be.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. So next question, how are both of you, Kimberly and Josh, how are you publicizing the Biden, Inflation Reduction Act bill and its impact on real people? Or is that something that has an effect on your race? I don't know who wants, maybe Kim, you want to go first and then Josh go after.
Yeah, I could take that one first. And thank you so much for that question, because in my district, especially in the city of Petersburg, Glenn Youngkin has launched what he calls the Partnership for Petersburg, which is nothing but a repackaged, rebranded set of initiatives that were already in place due to federal spending and due to federal funding. And it's been so interesting in my district to watch the way he has watch my words carefully, but to watch the way he has manipulated or attempted to manipulate people's interpretation of what was already there. We're talking about federal dollars that were fought for by my late Congressman Donald McKeechin, that Glenn Youngkin is now trying to repackage as if it were his own. So when I'm on doors, I make sure to let people know that Dems deliver for you. And it is the Democratic Party who is looking out for all of us, not just for those who didn't even ask for help. And that is one of the distinctive differences in my race, is that I make sure when I'm on doors to let people know what is state, what is federal, but all the while, what is Democrat.
Great, great. And Josh?
Yeah, so I mean, Virginia is a transportation state. I mean, it is transportation central. I can tell you that up here in Northern Virginia, transportation is key, and we're one of the few parts of Virginia that has almost every level. I mean, we've got light rail, we've got heavy rail, we've got interstate system, we've got free airports, well, maybe 2.5. Manassas Airport might go commercial here, so we'll see what happens here in a little bit. But that's a county level, not a state level issue. But you know, well, I know our senators have worked very hard in conjunction with President Biden in this legislation that secured tens of millions of dollars for Virginia, and a good chunk of that is going to Northern Virginia. And so when you talk also about this government shutdown that might happen, I mean, that is really, really going to affect particularly the Northern Virginia races. And so you've got people on the slate, not just me, but you've got my neighbor over to the right here in HD 22, Travis Nembhard. So your donations also help us bring that message around to voters to say, hey, you know, we just spent in Virginia, for those of you that don't know, we just had 3 months of budget stalemate because of just intransigent Republicans that are not willing to move. And now to see that replicated again at the national level, but yet still having a direct impact on Virginians is tough. It's tough for those working families to stomach, whether you work for the federal government or we work for the private sector that supports the federal government. I think it's also noteworthy on this slate as well. You've got Mike Beggins and Monty Mason, a few other people who are down in the Hampton Roads area. I mean, that's the largest naval base in the world, and huge number of federal jobs that will be put on pause from a paycheck perspective if this shutdown happens. So I like to say the positive, which is a huge amount of investment from President Biden and what Democrats have done at the federal level with that legislation, but also make folks aware that I think voters are aware of what's going on from what Republicans have done in Virginia for the last 3 months, and now what national Republicans are doing, and that direct negative impact in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and the Richmond area.
Great. Thank you. Wow, these answers are so impressive. Like we were almost there at our goal. We got to make it up like right now. So please, everybody, donate. Question for both of you, and maybe we'll start with Josh this time. If you could just say in a quick nutshell, what is your strategy to win your election? What is going to be the key for you to make sure that you come out on top? And then to Kimberly.
Yeah, so first I will start with something that we had no control over, which is my opponent. For those of you that don't know, my opponent made national news for about a day when he was caught by the Washington Post on 2 recordings about a month apart. He was at a functions where he thought he was speaking to like-minded folks, and he said very directly and very clearly, almost like he was in an audio booth, that he supports a 100% ban on abortion with no exception to the life of the mother. He even went so far as to say that Governor Youngkin's 15-week compromise actually isn't enough, and that's a consensus bill, but then they're going to go work further and further to a 100% ban. I mean, you can't get any clearer than that. It's 14 minutes of tape. And so that kind of drove the conversation of, I mean, I knocked 40 doors this morning, spoke to 17 people. But the number of times I see a couple that on my thing here says Republican household, but yet when I'm talking to some of the folks, particularly women who would be affected by this, I hear that they're changing their vote. So while that's technically a negative message, it is one that is just critically important to my constituents. The positive one that I will like to say, though, is that, again, like I said earlier, and that Kim mentioned as well, and everyone I know for a fact, because I've seen their messaging, everyone on this slate is talking about what we do for working families. And the biggest thing we do is lower the costs that are burdening working families right now. So as succinctly as I can, that's the positive and that's the negative that is at least going on up here in Northern Virginia. Over to you, Ken.
Great.
All right. Well, I'll give a slightly shorter answer. Listen, my path to victory comes down to one thing: ground game. 2 years ago, we lost this seat by 512 votes. 512 votes. Josh and I can knock that many doors in a weekend. 512 votes. So whereas, obviously we have a robust strategy, it still comes down to that face-to-face interaction, especially in a district as rural as mine. Just one quick example, I had a door that I was going to knock, and the house number was on the mailbox at the edge of the road. And I said, well, apparently the house is down there. It was about a 1/4-mile driveway to get to the house. And when I finally went down that gravel driveway and got to that home, she was so appreciative that someone had taken the time to make that trek all the way down her driveway to meet her. And she told me, she said, I've lived here for over 20 years and no one has ever come to my door. No politician has ever come to my door. And I said, well, luckily for you, I'm not a politician, but I am going to be your delegate. And it's those types of just little nuggets that you leave with the voter that just let them know, you know what, we're all the same. We're all the same. We are all fighting for the same things. So again, ground game is so important to me because it is those moments, those one-on-one moments with the voter that are just priceless. And I am so grateful to have those opportunities.
Great. Wow. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion, and unfortunately, we need to draw it for a close. But we will be hanging around after the formal end of our program. So if people have more questions that didn't get answered, they can do it then. But I'm going to hand the mic over to Lynn, and just one more, I think, big thank you to both Josh and to Kim for their wonderful answers during the Q&A. It was really fantastic. So Lynn, go ahead.
I think Aaron actually already said what I need to say, which is thank you, Josh. Thank you, Kim. If you're able to stay on, I think, Aaron, there are probably a few more questions that were asked. People may have other questions, about other things. Just put them in the chat. And thank you all. This is the formal part of the program. As I said, we'll be around for a few more minutes. I see Jim says that we have reached 116,000. So, grab your friends, grab your family, send them the donation link, and you can get us there. All right. Well, thank you so much.